And then she says,
Yep.
"Oh, wait. I better not finish. How you doing, buddy? Another week in the books."
Yeah, man. Always. And today we got something big going on.
We got big metals news. That's what we got.
Big metals popping. Guys, if you're listening for the first time, welcome to the show. This is the Crucible. I'm Emil and my co-host Paulybuck.
And this is the part where I would say sponsored by, but
not yet. We're waiting for a sponsor.
Not yet.
Guys, if you're not already, make sure you check out our website, cruciblelive.com. You're going to find a link on there or the ability to sign up for our mailing list. On that mailing list, if you sign up for it, you'll be entered to win a 5-ounce silver pour. Other ways to win, go on to Instagram at the Crucible Podcast. Subscribe to that. On YouTube at the Crucible Podcast. There's 3 ways you can be entered to win this 5-ounce awesomeness right here. I'm going to kick it over to Paul.
We're picking up a few entries every single week, so don't let it slip on you. Get over there.
That's right.
Get over there.
So what do we got queued up for today, man?
Well, remember a couple weeks back and we had a certain metals dealer on and we had just a great conversation with him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think we have someone else very special to the stacking community and has graced us with his presence and taken some time out of his day to sit down with us and talk metals. So What do you think?
Bring him up.
You want to do it?
Come on down.
Come on down.
All right. Hey, guys. How are you?
Hey, Tommy, what's shaking?
Metals are shaking every day.
That's
no
right,
doubt.
man.
No doubt.
So, Tommy, you and I, we've met before. We've met at the crawfish boil down in New Orleans, right?
Yes, in New Orleans, the mudbug boil at the Lockerman's home.
That's right, Davy Jones.
Very special time.
I remember seeing pictures on Instagram.
So much fun.
Indeed.
Paulie, this is your first time meeting Tommy.
We met 2 minutes ago, and it's already a pleasure of mine. Yes, for sure.
Definitely a pleasure, brother.
Thank you again for taking some time out of your day and hanging out with us.
Of course.
So, Tommy, I want to, I guess for any of the listeners or viewers who have not had the pleasure of meeting you before, give us a little elevator pitch on you, man. Who are you?
Sure. My name is Tom Haines, stackin.nyc on Facebook, Instagram, the usual places, YouTube. I'm a near lifelong stacker collector. Started through my dad, who was a collector. Realized that there were patterns in a collector's life, so to speak. Back in 2018, I said, I got all these metals. Let me sell a little bit of what I like less to buy a little bit of what I like more. And it was sort of at this moment that the epiphany of the silver degenerates process hit me. That we all have this behavior pattern. When we first start collecting, we love everything shiny. We can't, get our hands on enough. And then it just refines. We learn what we like a little bit more. We start to focus. It goes through a process. And I just kind of called it the silver degenerates process. Because if you're going to be a degenerate, you might as well be a silver degenerate.
That's right.
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah, I definitely agree with that process. When just for me, for instance, when I started, it was about getting everything as cheap as I possibly could. And then all of a sudden you start seeing, well, what about this coin over here that's got this ship on it? That looks pretty nice. And then you find out that you're going to pay a little bit more for that ship because there's only 12 or 15,000 of them. Well, then you got a whole pile of this stuff because you thought it was nice looking stuff. And then you try to ease back. You're like, I need to get back to doing what I wanted to be doing, was stacking some savings away and kind of ease back on that collecting part of the whole thing.
And I think that's a great place to come from. To elaborate on it, I do think both are important.
Sure.
I think that capitulation is something that's not spoken about enough on social media. Capitulation is when people get frustrated with the volatility of silver and they just kind of say, F it and cash in their stack.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you're buying things that you love, like that ship or a Superman piece or a comic piece, you're less likely to do that. And if you balance your stack properly, you've got both. You've got engagement, you've got the collectibles that you love and you'll cherish, hopefully for a long time. And if you're balancing your stack with some lower end silver, if you will, common designs, as I like to call them, if you get into a cash, crunch, you cash in your buffaloes.
Yeah.
You know, and you keep those cherished pieces that you may want to pass down to your children.
That's awesome.
They
About that,
always dig through the collection too.
they do.
I've missing a few Jurassic Park coins.
So I do want to add to that. There is a benefit in taking the time to actually educate your family members, your children, etc., on what's in your stack, right? And the reason I say that is because one of the best finds I ever had was walking into a bank, and I picked up about 6 rolls of old silver. I'm talking, these were like walking liberties. There were what's it called? Benjis in them, all kinds of good stuff. Yeah, and I got
never
6
get that
rolls.
lucky.
Dude, and it had to be, this was South Florida, so you know it was somebody who passed away and their kids were just liquidating their estate. They don't know any better.
Yes.
I think there's some benefit to teaching there.
I do think that it's important to have a legacy plan like that in place to educate your family members or your children on the value of what you have, whether it's collectible or just bullion value. I think that's extremely important because sometimes, you know, a lot of stackers will say we do this for our children. But what we fail to recognize is at least 50% of the time, our kids want nothing to do with our hobby.
Yeah.
So my 20-year-old daughter's like, cool, Dad, you're a nerd.
Yeah, right.
But you know, and at one point, does it also become a burden? You know, so as a dealer, I have an extensive inventory. God forbid if something happened to me, that's a lot of work for my daughter.
Right.
Sure.
You know, do I want to burden her with, you know, having to go through all of this, you know, thousands of ounces and sort of parse what's more valuable and less valuable? No, I don't, you know, I don't want that to be I don't want what I've created as a legacy to be a burden.
Mm-hmm. So while we're on that subject, what's your plan? How would you navigate that?
So basically, I think it's a liquidation plan, you know, unless they want otherwise. So I have trusted people. I say, look, if anything happens to me, this is who you take. Just take the whole collection, unless my daughter intervenes and says, no, let's do this.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then she can benefit from the cash value, hopefully, you know, both dollars.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So go ahead. Go ahead, Emil. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask to touch on how you came up with How You Stackin and Silver Degenerates. Those 2 taglines. Like, what are they? Where they?
And that's kind of where I was going to go with it.
Earlier,
similar
about the process, and I really see it from so many of us, and that's sort of what kind of said is like we're really kind of alike. The How You Stackin was more a recognition that people like to collect differently. Some people like collectibles. Some people stack only buffaloes. Some people say, I'm going graded coins. Some people, you know, have extensive Libertad. We all have our unique tastes and styles of stacking. Some people like vintage. Some people like modern bullion. Some people like pre-33 gold or European gold. So how you stacking? You know, I love
that's awesome.
my Mexican Libertads. I do love collectibles. I think they're the most interesting pieces out there.
Yeah, it's a great end line on every one of your posts on Instagram, and I'm just gonna say one that I caught the other day was, you know, hashtag How You Stackin, fractional blah blah blah. Yeah, I think
gram by gram.
Yeah, something like that. It's always a very catchy after the How You Stackin, and it makes complete sense though. It did
because I want people to think,
and then that punchline.
Yeah, I do want to create an engagement of thought beyond the tagline.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Stacking with fractions. There are people who are preppers for, you know, Teotihuacan or whatever may happen, the collapse of the dollar. And if you believe that's going to happen and silver is going to skyrocket throughout that process, you know, you really do need to be focused on fractional.
Yeah,
you know?
Sure, 100%.
So in your time working with metals, you've had several collaborations throughout the years. I've seen lots of them pop up. Just to name a few, I know you did some work with MK Bars. I actually had one of your How You Stackin piece. That was actually a really cool one. But I've also seen, just on a quick little glance, I saw you had something with Atmex. I know Atmex is
Yes.
carrying your TEP pieces right here.
Yes.
Right.
We did those. It was a limited to 500, and hopefully we'll do more. You know, a lot of dealers, you know, you guys see it on YouTube. There's this sort of love-hate relationship with Big Bullion. For me, and I'm very open about it, I'm a fan of Big Bullion. If for no other reason, they have the resources for licensing. They have the resources for real specials. And whether they fully utilize their power or not, they have the power of marketing to cast a wide net to new stackers.
Absolutely. They have
Yeah,
reach.
100%.
So I think a failure to realize that benefit is self-defeating for those of us on social media who say shop small always. That's not, and I'm not going to disagree with that. You know, shop small, but at the same time, you have to recognize that Big Bullion has its place, and it's a valuable place in our community at large.
Of course. I also found this beauty right here.
Yes,
North Carolina. Please note
that was a collaboration with Heads or Tails coin and collectibles.
Nice.
And our first wholesale customer was JM Bullion.
Yes.
And the JM Bullion family. So we're on JM Bullion, we're on Provident Metals, and so on. Yep.
That's awesome.
So I've worked with Atmex. I've worked with the A-Mark family.
How about this guy right here?
That's the 2-ounce cast version. And that's a beauty. Those are done by Paulybuck. I love working with other members of the community, collaborating as often as I can, for sure.
And so I noticed one more that to me was a very significant one. And if nothing else, it's because of what it kind of represents.
Yes.
And this is the NGC label that you were able to secure. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that was a great process, and inspired by a mentor of mine, Miles Standish, who at the time was vice president of marketing at NGC, and he sort of guided me into the direction. And I just kind of like, you know, as a good mentor does, he let me think it was my idea, which it kind of was, you know, so to speak. Pardon me, but it was a great process of working with a company like NGC on the art and getting the approvals. Realize what they like, what they don't like, and what they're willing to do. Little known fact: most people can get that done. Right. It's just about working through the process, and it's not necessarily easy. But for me, it was rewarding.
That's awesome.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I like these pieces. I think that what we do on social media as a community is a part of Bullion history. And I'm intrigued by Bullion history, you know, whether it's some of the collapses or the scandalous, you know, crimes that have been allegedly committed.
Right.
You know, I think there's a really interesting history here, whether it's the art bars, the mint histories through the Liberty Act, the U.S. Mint that Ronald Reagan signed. I think that all of these snapshots tell a story about who we are as stackers generationally.
Right. That's true.
You know, and I think that what's happening on social media is an extremely important part of that history going forward. And therefore, I think the mark we leave is significant and it's important.
Right on. You've been stacking for how long?
So this most recent time, since about 2016, I'd taken a break prior to that after a divorce, you know, cashed in my metals. You know, so it's been on and off for most of my life. But this most recent time, about since 2016-ish.
Okay. And so prior to going into, and again, maybe just pardon my ignorance on this, are you doing this full time? This is your full time? Yes. That's awesome.
But if by full time you mean about 70 to 80 hours a week, week after week after week.
Yeah, right.
Yes, full time forever.
I would say a couple things about that. I think a lot of people underestimate how difficult this business is. It's not about buy low, sell high. You know, people think, oh, all I got to do is buy for this and sell it for that. No, it's absolutely not true. And what I found is the people who, if that's your only tool in your box, you're not going to have a long lifespan as a dealer, right? If all you know is buy as cheap as possible, sell as cheap as possible, you're not going to have a long business life.
Tommy,
So with that, go ahead.
No, your turn. Your turn.
All right. No. So what I'm wondering is, okay, so you back again in 2016, but prior to that, were you dealing metals, or did you start
dealing? No, only collecting.
Only collecting prior to 2016. So when did you decide that this is gonna be it? Like I'm gonna start dipping my toes in. Did it start with Instagram?
It did. And what happened was, as I started to go through some of this process, I didn't really. I was kind of like selling a little bit here and there. But when I started selling on Instagram, again, just to buy more Libertides, I'm going to sell this buffalo that's been sitting there. It's grimy, and give me $1 over spot, and I'm going to turn that money into a Libertide.
Okay.
What I realized a couple things. I'm a New Yorker. I'm not shy. I'm a little extroverted. I was doing camera forward videos.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, my account was like.
Yep.
And at the time, I was 43 years old, really didn't do a lot on social media in my life. And I didn't even realize that most people in the metals community didn't show their faces. So my account's getting all this attention. I have no idea why. I think I'm awesome, though. I'm like, yeah, look at me. But it's because I was showing my face. I was doing something that really
you were somebody. You weren't just a voice or a set of hands, right?
Right. And now it's different. A lot more people are showing their face now. And I understand why people don't want to show their faces, whether it's security or whatever. But my attitude has always been, if you make yourself safe, if you make your home safe, at some point you just kind of have to say, I'm going to live my life.
Yep.
Right. You can't be controlled by your business, by what you own, to a point where it's like, I can't show my face. I can't tell people what I do. I can't, right?
And at that point, it makes it tough. It makes it tough to do more things what you want to do when you're not showing yourself.
Correct.
And for a dealer, right?
And putting yourself out there has its downsides too. It makes you a target. Social media can be a ruthless playing field, so to speak.
Yep, that's right. So, Tommy, you talked about a couple of things that set you apart, and I want to speak from personal experience. One thing that I believe sets you apart is you take the time to do little things that others, maybe they don't see it as important or whatever it might be. But for instance, when you mail out somebody's package, every time you've mailed me out a package, it's always come with a little note, even if it's just a little thank you, Tommy, like something like that. But it's usually more than that. And, you got to figure you're not a small time dealer. You push out, packages.
A couple hundred a week on the average. I would say that I would say 95% of my packages or more have gone out with notes.
Yeah, that's
there are
amazing,
times I'm
man.
traveling. I may not get to write a note on a Friday. Every other weekend I pick up my daughter. I'm gone most of Friday, just traveling to New York and back. But 95% of my packages over the years have gotten a note. And I think that's important because people have choices. And I think that when they choose you, the expression of gratitude is important.
Yeah. And that's what keeps them coming back. I mean, I get my wife to read them for me because
God bless her. I don't know how she does it.
Yeah. All right. So anyways, it's a nice touch. It is definitely a nice touch.
Thank you.
It's appreciated. And I believe that that's what helps bring people back. It shows, A, you got your face showing that gives somebody a face to trust, but B, that extra special touch. That's just something that most people don't do. And it makes a difference.
Yes. Yep. And I talk to my team, I have a couple guys that work for me, and I tell them, people want to feel that gratitude. And sometimes we take it for granted on social media, but that's especially when we shouldn't, if that makes sense. Because on social media, we have more of a community. We learn who we are. We meet each other, right? I don't want to let you down. Right. I don't want to give the impression that I'm not grateful. And of course it happens, right? Meaning not intentionally, but sometimes you get busy. It's like, okay, thanks, and you move on.
Yeah, right.
But I think there's a difference when you're conscious of it,
right?
and when you're conscious of the gratitude, or you certainly try to be, I think that means a lot to people.
Yeah, for sure. So long game, what do you see as some of the challenges in the metals world?
Growth is hard. Growth is real hard. I think that we have challenges on social media, particularly we're fighting a current of big social media companies that don't necessarily want peer-to-peer sales because they can't monetize it.
You're talking about the platforms.
The platforms, right?
Yeah.
We're fighting their algorithms if we're trying to monetize their platforms. So I think that's a challenge. I've actually talked about that for years, and I can't believe that it hasn't cracked down, but you're starting to feel it tighten up.
Yeah.
I was talking about this in 2019. I said, it's very simple. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want to watch, a whole community make millions of collective dollars, and he's making nothing.
Making nothing on it.
That's not what he's here for. Right. That's just business 101.
Yep.
So I think that also with the emergence of social media, there's a difficulty for seasoned dealers because you're competing against a broad array of people, and some of the people are, not disparagingly, but maybe they need to pay their electric bill, so they're going to sell cheap. Maybe they've got a lot of money and they just want to sell cheap because they enjoy it. So you're competing against a whole slew of people that may not be doing this as a business,
right? And
they don't care about the bottom line, right? So sometimes people say, "Oh, tell me how much your Buffalo's." "Oh, $2.50 over." "Oh man, he's got it for $1.50 over." And I'm thinking to myself, "Well, man, he's making nothing."
Shooting himself in the foot.
Yeah, right.
He's making nothing. And the truth is, he may not care that he's making nothing.
Right.
So I think that's a challenge.
And then you throw scammers in that whole mix. They're everywhere.
Right. So that's a challenge for somebody who wants to do this business. But on the flip side, I will say this: what I'm seeing on social media is driving the industry. It's guys like me who are doing colorization, guys like Reckless and Paulybuck who are getting into minting and vertical integration.
Yeah.
Who are really saying, I'm doing more than buying and selling. What's the next thing I can do to elevate the product? What's the next thing I can do to elevate the game, so to speak? And it's collaborative, it's competitive, but you have hundreds of people who are really putting forth effort into elevating what's happening in the bullion world. It's how a guy like me got on Jam Bullion. I work in my basement,
right?
But it's from that level of elevation, and that's really, Atmex is very good at it, but really beyond that, it's all social media. It's what I see is all social media. I don't see any of the besides Atmex. I don't see any of the other big bullion doing it, and they may head that direction, but I don't even see any of the mid-tier guys doing it.
Yeah, you're right there. I mean, Atmex has it covered. I mean, they are constant.
Very impressive operation. Very impressive operation.
I've noticed that. I mean, just daily via Instagram, they're constantly putting out a spot price thing. It'll be 4 different pictures: gold, silver, platinum. It's just they're constantly bringing traffic.
I think that Atmex in particular recognizes the importance of social media.
Sure.
Whether or not they are going to be able to fully execute on that, I don't know. I have a good relationship with them. That's to be determined. I believe they were just bought out by Pamp Swiss, became a majority shareholder.
A couple months back, correct?
What's that?
A couple months back, something like that?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Yep.
So Pamp now has a besides their distribution network through MTB, now what I think that gives them is a real direct retail customer base for their products, but also all the vertical integration that Atmex has done, they now have access to that, whether it's minting or packaging, colorization. And I'm going to say stay tuned for Pamp the Powerhouse.
Pamp 2.0. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh, yes.
That's wild.
Yeah, no doubt.
Man. So, Tommy, if you think back into your whole experience of working with metals, What were some of the biggest roadblocks, or one of the biggest roadblocks that you've had to overcome?
So here, I'll tell you this, my story. So I started in March of 2018, and it didn't take me long. Like I said, the whole face forward thing, my account was growing really fast. People were really receptive. There weren't a ton of sellers like there are now.
Mhm.
I was doing what I thought was very well, very fast. You know, I want to say like 4 or 5 months later. At the time, I had 2 other jobs. I was working in real estate in New York City, full-time, and bartending part-time in Times Square. I love bartending, by the way.
I respect that. I was a bartender for quite a few years.
Yeah. So that being said, at one point, I think it was July, I sat down with my ex and my daughter and said, I'm thinking about leaving the bartending job. Oh, you're crazy. So the first hurdle was the time to make the money, so to speak, for the business. Right. The second hurdle was people don't get us as stackers sometimes. If you're not a stacker, you don't get us.
Sure.
Right. So, I didn't have a lot of support, and that was hard, and then I just kept pushing, of course, because at first I listened. I was like, yeah, I'm crazy. Right. Yeah. But by the time I want to say like November or December rolled around, I had no choice. So I was in almost a year, and I felt like I left my bartending job. And then it was just a couple of months later that I left my real estate job as well.
Wow.
So I think that the challenges would be, you have to be in a supportive environment. You have to have whether a partner, or family member, significant other, whoever it may be, that's supportive of what you're doing, because it's time consuming. And in the early days, especially, it is not profitable. My favorite story is when I was asked, are you actually making any money? Right. And my answer was, well, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I was asked, well, where's the money? And I pointed to a box of silver.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's where it goes.
It's into the metals.
Yeah, so, I think we've both been in that situation, me and Pauly. I think from the beginning, I know, Pauly, you've told me that there's been moments where you kind of have to have a conversation with your wife about what metals really are. And I mean, I know I've been there.
And we've chatted about that back and forth. And now yours, for instance, is caught on a little quicker. And
she buys gold now.
Yeah, there you go. And where mine is still, it's getting closer, but she just loves seeing those bank account numbers, right? She loves just seeing numbers on a phone or numbers on a piece of paper, just digital BS. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's cool. I mean, that was cool in, the 80s and stuff, but like, this is real. It's right here in front of you, right? It's not a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper on your phone. Like this is here. It's not going anywhere.
People, when we have these hashtags or slogans or whatever you want to call them, people underestimate how true they can really be. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. And it's so true. I've been in trouble in my life financially. Had silver, cashed it in, boom. Took a hit like any other stacker would. I've been there. I've done shows in the last few months. I tell people, now's not the time you want to sell to me. I can't give you what I think it's really actually worth, because I'm paying X. And I just try to be as honest as I can with people. And he's like, you're the first one here that told me that.
See, I think that's my wife's biggest thing, is we haven't been to that point yet where I had to say, okay, go get the box. We have money. I just have to turn it into that, right? If something drastic wasn't, then maybe she would catch on a little more. Or maybe I just need to throw her in a car and take her to a coin shop and take an ounce of gold and say, look what we just did here. Does it make sense now?
But don't do it there.
Maybe when gold's a little higher. Maybe when gold's a little higher.
Like I told you, now's not the time. So I have a question.
Go ahead.
I think that what you're doing is great. I've watched a couple of your episodes, particularly the one with Sean D'Souza, great guy I've met.
Hell of a guy, yeah.
How did you guys get started in doing a podcast together? You have
Well,
a
he
great
kept-
dynamic. You have a great.
He kept blowing me
relationship
up
here.
like a crazy ex, so I had to answer one day.
That's right. No, anytime I would catch Pauly in the chat anywhere, I'd be like, "Hey, Pauly, we got to do a podcast. We got to do a
Yeah.
podcast." So reason is, and I don't think this has been said on the air yet, but out of the massive community that exists through Instagram, Facebook, all that, there's only a handful of people that I think I talk to on a regular basis. And I don't even know that Pauly was really one of them, but his character stood out to me. That he just seemed like a very down to earth, B, very good to go kind of guy. So to me, that was a huge deal. Is my camera frozen?
It is, but
dang it.
We also have a mutual friend, who Emil actually had a metal show on YouTube with, and I did a little talk show with, and that was kind of a connection there as well. And then, we first started, like, I guess, chatting back and forth on Instagram because I happened to find a coin that was dated wrong. That was a Wolverine Air coin. It was supposed to be a 2021, and the date was dated 2018. And
yes,
those guys ended up having a bunch of them and was able to get the word out that, hey, check your coins. These things are out there. We don't know how many are out yet. We're waiting for the Perth Mint to get back a hold of us. So now you take a 9-coin series, and it's got to be called a 10-coin series because they're legit. They're legit coins. They claim 400 of them were minted. And then going back to what he said was, it was just a chat thing. It was just bound to be. We're from two different worlds, and we just both think alike. And we thought, why not give it a shot? So this is episode 10, week 10. We've been on a strict schedule every week. We're actually a little early this week. These don't air until Thursdays. We usually record on a Wednesday. But here it is Monday. What is it? November the 13th. But my question was going to be is this, I'm Polish and I'm a pretty good people person. Like I can hold a conversation. Yeah. So I can hold a conversation pretty well with people, and I don't even need to know them, kind of like what we're doing here right now.
Yes.
But do you have a business background of any kind? Did you have any schooling for it, or is this just something natural? Is this just something natural?
I am not a school person.
Is.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Back to the Crucible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've tried to go to college. It's not for me.
Okay.
I barely made it through high school. Had less to do with intelligence than just sort of being bored with what I was being taught.
Mm-hmm.
So for most of my life, I found myself in entrepreneurial roles, whether it was real estate, opening a restaurant, having my own business. I've always had an entrepreneurial streak for sure. Decent with marketing, just naturally. And it just sort of fit, So when you have certain business sense, I think the business that you're doing matters less than how you execute it.
Yeah. And then to get back into, I guess, another thing between Emil and I, now that he's back, is we both had YouTube channels, where we both have, and we talk about precious metals and so on and so forth. And it was just like I was saying when he was gone, it was just bound to happen at some point in time. And it's worked out great.
Well, it's good. You guys have great chemistry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you said something
we've said that before too.
You said something interesting about, how we're sort of different, but we're sort of the same. And I think that's so true. I'm from Brooklyn originally. Probably my best friend in the community is from Alabama, Ryan Silverport. I think that we share enough core values in this community that all the differences otherwise go away. Any other difference in the real world may be something. Here it matters less because I know stackers have certain core values, work ethic and family traditional values for the most part. And we might disagree on the minutia, but we know that we're with good, honest, hardworking, loyal, family-oriented people.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
at the
awesome.
end of the day. And I
We're
think that's a
taking money out of our
powerful-
paychecks. You know, this isn't, we're not all rich here. We're taking money out of our weekly paychecks to put it into something that we believe in.
That's
And
exactly
that
right.
It's going to be there. Either we need it or it's going to be there for when somebody else might, you know, come across it in our family that needs it, or, you know, we educate and then they know
Amen.
that this is, you know, call it generational wealth if you want. I was terrible with money, and with this, and we've had a whole show on this, but I'm an alcoholic, and this is something that I put away that isn't booze. I'm not out there buying booze with money and just wasting it. I can take $50 that I would have spent at the bar last night and buy a nice piece of silver, or put it away and maybe buy 10 ounce of gold per month. You know, it's
Silver degenerates.
helps a lot.
You'll see, and you may or may not realize this, but we oftentimes in this community have an addictive personality.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
There are
Sure.
lots of people in recovery. You know, where we can be impulsive, and it can be expressed in the buy side. I talk about this in my auctions. I'm like, come on, slow down, guys. Sometimes it's just like, you know, but we also enjoy this, right? So that's where it becomes a little bit like the tongue-in-cheek silver degenerates.
That's awesome.
You know,
Yeah,
it feeds into that addictive nature, so to speak, and it's a thank God, a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said, I'm half Polish, half Irish, man. I like to drink too. You know,
right.
and you have to check yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or you
one
check
other
yourself in somewhere else.
yeah.
Exactly.
One other good point I think about the show that Pauly and I have got going on, and we've got you're actually our 10th episode. So we've got a few under the belt.
We mentioned that while you were gone.
Oh, did you?
He beat you to it.
Dang it. So you might have stopped me if you already told this part, but I think what sets us apart is that you know, we're kind of a show that, yes, the show it has a segment on metals. We'll talk about metals, or we'll bring somebody on and that show will be specifically about, you know, in this case, metals. But, you know, in the future and in other shows that we've had, we touch on a lot of other things. Just, it could be anything from nostalgia to life experiences, crazy, weird news stories. I think next month we're going to be bringing on a metal detectorist, and we're going to be talking about all of her crazy adventures that, you know, she goes around the world and does all kinds of things. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting show.
There are lots of concentric circles in our universe.
Oh yeah.
Right. Whether it's comic books, the 2A community, the knife community, you could just go on and on and on. And, you know, like my dear friend Miles used to say, you know, a lot of us we have the collector gene.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And going into this, we knew we wanted to keep it somewhat about metals, because that's what we both are here in these broadcasts on our respected YouTube channels, which is about precious metals. But knowing that this video version is on YouTube, that's fine and dandy. Once we got to a certain mark, we're going to start uploading these audio versions of the podcast on different audio platforms to see how they do out there as well.
That's right.
Yes. Oh, well, I think human interest is a great angle, right? Yeah, people want to hear about people's lives. It's hopefully interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So. Exactly. Right.
Well, I guess we'll find out, right?
You better get a better guess than me.
Yeah.
No.
So Tommy, what's in your stack?
Oh, I love Libertads. I love Libertads. I just got a 98 graded. I found another one at the show. I was like, I gotta buy it. You know,
all right.
Yeah. You was at a coin show.
Mm-hmm. We did Chattanooga. I do only a couple coin shows a year, and mostly it's sort of like a little work and a little play, just to meet up with the guys and gals from the community. You know, we do Chattanooga. Philly's a show that I'll do. Obviously, that's close, but I really enjoy the Chattanooga show. I like the mid-size regionals. So Chattanooga has about 200 tables. It's small enough that you can walk it. It's manageable, but it's big enough that you can actually find some interesting pieces and make good connections and sell some metals.
Yeah. You haven't done the Raleigh one yet, right?
I have not.
That's a pretty big one too. And it's probably about the same distance as Chattanooga.
Yeah, I may sign up to be on the wait list for Dalton.
Okay.
That's a pretty big one. It's about 300 tables, Georgia.
That's awesome.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
Nice. You said Libertads, but how do you feel about, like bars, 10-ounce, kilo bars, 100-ounce bars,
Uh,
anything like
so
that?
I
Or
am a believer that metals will at some point kind of hit their true stride.
Mhm.
I don't know if that means 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I don't know.
Sure.
But with that belief, I believe that in my stack, I prefer bars that are 10 ounces or less, preferably five, even five,
Fives.
no more than five for me. Fractional gold for sure.
There's one.
If you're stacking ounces of gold, then gold goes
There you
to
go.
$4,000,
There it
and
is.
you need to liquidate. Yes, 2 ounces, right?
Oh yeah, 2 ounce.
And gold hits $4,000, and you get into that jam. How many people have $4,000 for a piece of gold? But
Exactly.
if you have fractional,
That's
more
right.
people
And
will
that's
have
why
$400.
I started my channel talking about stuff like this because I watched my own family get burned on just buying so much stuff and paying ungodly amounts of money for it, and then doesn't have money to pay their bills and have to go lose money by selling this stuff right away, right?
Mm.
Is basically not so much a budget, but just a goal monthly to buy at least a minimum of 1/10 ounce of gold for it helps me basically.
Yes.
And then I just talk about it. And if people
Yes.
like to hear about it and follow along, that's great. That's a win for me because it feels like I'm helping somebody that they didn't just go blow money on something else, a
That's
bunch
right.
of
Well,
fast food,
I
coffee,
talk
or
about the
whatever,
same thing
Yeah.
in terms of dollar cost averaging.
But
right?
you do get the people who give you some BS in your comment section about paying so much of a premium on fractional. Well, I tell you, that gold goes up the way you think it's going to go up. I would rather have a bunch of that little bit of fractional than a bunch of ounces, because that fractional you're going to be able to get rid of much, much easier. And guess what? You just got your premium back on it.
And not only that, but I was just going to say, to any honest dealer, fractional will hold a
Yes.
portion of the premium.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
far
for
better
sure.
than
Yes.
bigger gold.
And this is what
To
we're
any
talking
honest
about
dealer.
bullion. I'm not talking collectible stuff like
Yes,
the
correct.
Spanish
Right.
mint coins and stuff like that. I'm talking bullion, eagles, maples,
Yep.
Brits, stuff like that. Yeah.
Tommy, you stack gold? You have gold in your stack?
Some.
Okay.
Some. Not a lot.
What's your favorite piece out of everything you got? One that you really probably wouldn't want to let go of?
So I'm going to elaborate. Not only do I love Libertads, but really what's in my deep stack are gifts.
Okay.
And some personal favorites on collaborations. So
Okay.
in my deep stack, I have a lot of those. Talks about MK bars, the channel bars.
Yep.
Some really cool pieces. Anything that was ever given to me as a gift, that's in my deep stack.
That's awesome.
And there are some beauties in there. Bars. There's some cool stuff in there.
So I guess if I could ask, what's your legacy piece, the one piece that you want to be passed down to generations?
Ooh.
I need you to boil it down for me, man.
I would say that it would be. I don't collect at that level, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to keep pieces for legacy like that per se, I think it's Libertads. I think they have the most upside in America of any piece. I think that's a function of immigration cycles. And just, as immigrants are here longer and they become more and more successful and they become successful generationally, I think that will translate into more purchasing power for coins like Libertads.
I told my wife when we go on vacation to one of our anniversary vacations, we're going to end up going to Mexico at some point in time. I said, wouldn't it be nice just to take a tube of those down there and flip one here, flip one there? And she doesn't know what it does, but those down there will. And when you flip them one, maybe they give you a little money. Extra service, right?
It's money,
right? Yeah.
I think so. Tommy, to your point about the Mexican Libertads, one thing that I like the most about them, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in this, but my understanding is that in the paper or some source that they have available to the people of Mexico, that there is a current value for silver that they're paying for Libertads. So you can either buy or sell something around that trade value. Is that not how it works?
So that is legislation that's to the best of my knowledge now, right?
Okay.
That's legislation that has been attempted to be passed through the Mexican Congress on multiple occasions. My understanding is that it has never passed, but what they wanted to do was peg it to a current value based on spot.
Okay.
So that it was always at that value. My understanding is that it never passed. And to this day, that's why it says 1 onza still.
Right.
They don't give
and
it a
not
denomination.
Peso. Right.
Right. But they would. There is a contingent of Mexican lawmakers who would like to see that happen.
Yeah, I'd like to see that happen for
the problem is
American
it's a
Silver
threat
Eagle.
to fiat currency.
I know.
In any nation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
a challenge. Let's say to fiat country, to fiat currency from any country.
Right. So, Tommy, talking about your business, where do you see it in 10 years from now? Like ideal situation. What do you want it to look like?
I would love to get to the day, this is going to be honesty, where I could step into almost like a CEO role, where I could focus on the big picture. This is what we need for the people. This is what the people deserve. And then just be able to have it executed on a professional level every step of the way. And that's one of you talk about challenges of a small business. You know, I'm doing shipping, I'm doing invoicing, I'm doing packing, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm, focusing on the equipment we're getting in. I'm working with my brother. I'm working with the guy who does the most of my shipping, and when you're an entrepreneur of a growing business, you're pulled in so many directions that it becomes really hard. Right. Yeah. So I think that if I can't make that happen within 10 years, it'll probably be retirement in 10 years.
There you go. Right.
Well, what about, I'm just going to assume here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're probably dealing with a bunch of wholesalers too, not just one, but you're dealing with a bunch of different people. I mean, that probably, it took some hustle to be able to connect with these people.
Yes.
And keep a good connection with them, good standings all these years.
Absolutely. And, I have some great relationships at that level. Thank God. That in itself was an interesting journey. It was an observation back in 2018. Somebody said to me, you just bought this from a guy on Instagram, and now you're selling it to another guy on Instagram. And are you guys just buying from each other and selling to each other all day? And I sat back and I was like, yeah, I think that about sums it up. And it's sort of because this was sort of in the very early days where I was like, can I do this as a business? And then it dawned upon me, if I'm just buying from some guy on Instagram and selling to some guy on Instagram, that's not a business model.
Right.
Yeah. You can only have a business model with consistent supply of inventory. Mm-hmm. So it was very early. I was probably one of the first on Instagram. I'm sure there were maybe some guys on Facebook, right? Because it was a more well-established community. But I said, well, if I don't have wholesale accounts, I don't have a business. And so it became an effort to, well, where do I go? How do I, and it was just, sometimes it was cold calls. Sometimes it was an email. Yeah. It was a lot of no. I was shot down by AppMex the first time.
Okay.
And I was just persistent. Sometimes, the cliche about not taking no for an answer, you kind of got to push.
Right.
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
So
I think that's sort of an interesting thing. It was like, it was a recognition that you have to have these wholesale accounts. So that would be another piece of advice to anybody who's starting out. Look for those relationships, foster them, and respect them.
No doubt.
Send them a little note.
Yes, because the bullion world is big, but it's also very small. Yeah. You upset some of these guys, you're going to be known.
Yeah, you have a story like that where you upset somebody inadvertently and you felt a sting from it. Anything like that?
The closest I came, and I can't go into too many details.
No names. We'll call the guy Jerry.
I'll say it cost me some money.
Okay.
But as soon as it happened, I instantly made it right.
Good deal.
It was just sort of a communication mess. And the lesson there in my mind for any young dealers or anybody who's starting out is just be honest. If something was out of your control, that doesn't mean you don't have responsibility over it. Something can be out of your control, but you are still responsible to make good for it when it's a result of or a function of your business.
That's right. 100%.
Which kind of reminds me of, maybe it has something to do with the shipping carrier. Have you had many issues with packages not showing up?
Very, very few, but one recently, $8,000.
Oh,
yep. The buyer was sending me pictures right from the post office. It's split open, contents removed.
Really?
200 bars.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I looked at it, my heart sank, and I said,
my God.
We'll redo your order, and give me 2 days. It'll be out in 2 days.
Yeah.
Now, I have insurance, which is another story. They denied my claim, but that's another story.
Yeah.
So that's been a big challenge for me. But the good thing is that person knew that when he reached out to me, and it was somebody from Facebook, a major Facebook dealer, that he was going to be taken care of.
Yeah, that you weren't just going to ghost him or nothing. And my first response
was, of course, my heart sank.
Yeah.
But the first thing that went through my mind is, I got to make this right for him and for the customers that he sold to. It was a pre-sale.
Right.
So
yeah,
there's no time for me to ask, oh, can I do an investigation? Can I do this? Can I do that? No, here's your bars. Now I'll do that stuff.
Yeah, right.
That's crazy. Hey, I had that happen.
Still hurts.
Oh yeah. And I had that happen maybe to 1/8 of the degree that you just said. And it stung because, if you're, especially, being a small time metal mover, I wouldn't even say I was quite the dealer yet, but a metal mover, $1,000 will eat into any and all profits for a month. It's done. Gone.
Here's what I tell people: if you're working on let's say a 10% profit margin, which sometimes can be generous, right? That means I have to sell $80,000 to make up for that loss.
Yep.
So
that's a lot. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I hope the whole insurance thing pans out in the end.
Well, I'm gonna fight him a little bit because
go break some legs.
Let's just say when you get your policy, read it from cover to cover.
Right.
Because this is a business policy I was paying a lot of money for, and they're claiming I'm not covered in this case. So.
But what other case would you need to be covered for? You're a metals business.
Well, it's funny because I said, well, why did I declare a value if theft is not included?
Right.
Oh, fire and flood. I said, that's an awful lot of money to pay for fire and flood insurance.
Which fire and flood does not damage the metals.
Which isn't going to damage the metals, right? Hey, what about, all right, so you've been on Instagram for quite a while, but you're dipping your toes into something else, and that is drip. And I've heard a lot about it on Instagram. I've actually sat in on a couple shows of someone else. But how is that going? Is it catching on? Because I know there's Whatnot out there as well. I don't know if you do that, but I mentioned drip because in the description of this video is going to be a special link from you, and you can get into after of what that link gives anybody, if anything at all.
And if you click the link, you'll get $10 off your second purchase, as long as you spend $30 on your first.
Okay. So you heard it there. $10 off your second if you spend $30 on your first.
The second time. So if you buy a $15 piece, you're getting the $10 off.
Nice.
That's how it works, right? So here are my thoughts on drip. I think that these live auction platforms have a good future. I don't think that's able to be fully determined yet because it's still very new and wild west-ish, right? So what these platforms do in the early days is they're incentivizing sellers like me, but they're going to heavily incentivize you for the amount of time you put into it, right? So I do once a week because I'm busy on Instagram and Facebook and other places, so I can't give the full time. So a dealer who can give them a lot of time is going to be very heavily incentivized. Now, there's good to that, and there's bad to that. So when you're heavily incentivizing someone, think about any economy, a free market, right?
Right.
That's a form of manipulation of a free market.
Yep.
So now there's an uneven playing field between the heavily incentivized seller and a lesser incentivized seller.
Right.
So what you're doing is you're de-incentivizing your smaller sellers, which help you create a vibrant community. Right. So you just can't have a couple of big sellers, pulling people in. They're heavily incentivized. And I think that's why I said, I think all these platforms are going to need some time. I think they're on the 100% the right track because as I stated earlier, I think, the social media platforms are squashing peer-to-peer groups. Eventually, we're all going to have to pay fees. The devil will have to be paid his due, whether it's processing fees, whether it's platform fees, whatever it may be. That is and that's ultimately the future.
And I'll agree with that. And it's only a matter of time till you mentioned earlier about Zuckerberg's going to want his cut. As of today, like there are a lot of shows on YouTube and they're not being charged, and those channels are monetized as well. Some of them via YouTube, and they have these auctions, and they don't have to go to those. Yeah, well, thousands. They don't have to go to Whatnot and Drip where they're actually being charged to do an auction there. Where YouTube, they're not charging them to have that show there. But I think these other platforms are good because you have options then if you are a big seller. Because if you are a big seller, for instance, like yourself, now you're here, you're there. You're not just limited to one location. You're getting yourself recognized on different locations. Where
brand extension is what I call it.
Yeah. So if someone's a big seller on YouTube and YouTube pulls the plug, now what? They're just going to go belly up because they haven't been doing anything on Instagram. They haven't been doing anything on Whatnot. Even eBay's starting live sales again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Well, I think that is ultimately the future. I think being as many places as you can be is important, but it's also maddening.
Sure. Well, like you said, 70, 80, 90 hours a week, but it's your baby too.
And that's it. To
be that, to be that top level where you want to be in the next 10, 12 years, it's what it's going to take, right?
That's exactly right. It's not an easy business. It has the ability to be rewarding. You can make money, right? But it is not easy money by any stretch of the imagination. It comes with a lot of headaches. You're dealing with high value products and a very low that operate on a very low profit margin. To say that this industry is capital intensive from a retailer perspective, it's an understatement. It's all capital. If you want to make $25,000 a month, you better be ponying up $250,000 a month.
Right. That's if you're
lucky. As soon as you don't pony up that $250,000,
yeah, right. That's if you're lucky, like you said.
Yeah. And that's if you're lucky if you're hitting a 10% profit margin. Because I don't hit that every month. Some months I do, some months I don't.
Right. Tommy, let's say I'm just getting started, right? I'm interested in metals. I watched a couple YouTube videos. I don't really know where to go, who to buy from. What tips do you have for me?
I think I'll say I think YouTube is probably one of the best places for content. I think that reaching out to a trusted seller, and there's lots of us out there, just for frank, honest advice. To go to a dealer who's interested in more than your money, I think is important. But I think YouTube is a fantastic resource for content. Some of the major websites have archived content. It's a direction I wanted my website to go into, but I just, again, when you're working 70, 80 hours a week, if it's 40 hours on Instagram and it's, 15 hours on Facebook and it's 10 hours on wherever it is, right? How many hours do I have left for my website?
Yeah.
0.
You gotta clone yourself, Tommy.
Well, it's funny because I said, 10 years from now I want to be the CEO, but I was joking with somebody. I said, I'm worried about hiring somebody to help me with the printer and shipping and this and that. Maybe what I really need to hire is a CEO who could manage the big picture. Maybe I'm thinking about it all wrong. I don't know.
Wow,
Stay tuned.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Interesting.
So I think that one of the things that's helped me reach a minor level of success, if you will, and this is another tip for other people too, you have to think differently. If everybody is doing one thing, you have to think what can I do differently than everybody else is doing? When I wanted to make my last investment in my business, do I start casting? Well, lots of people are casting. Do I pour? Lots of people are pouring. Do I do that? Well, lots of people are doing this. Nobody's colorizing. Nobody's colorizing.
Right.
And then what's next? You know, are people mixing mediums?
Mm-hmm.
Are they thinking outside the box? Are they thinking creatively? And I would suggest to anybody, think outside the box if you want to achieve any level of success.
Okay.
Because again, you know, to circle back, it's not just about buy as cheap as you can, sell as cheap as you can. You won't be in business very long. You've got to be creative in a crowded field where there are major institutional players.
Yeah,
And you've got to stand out not only with your product and your approach, but make sure you are dealing honestly with people, that you are a person of your word, that you have integrity, and that you have an even keel, right? Because we can all get mad, we can all lose our temper. When you do that to people, they remember it.
Yeah.
You know,
Right
if somebody messes up, my philosophy is like, I'm going to treat them with the same respect I would like to be treated if I messed up. You know, in terms of my wholesalers or this or that.
Right.
You know, so I think that's an important way to think. There are always repercussions. You know,
Tommy, I got just one or two more questions for you. Then I'm going to pass it over to Pauly. Do you have any customers that you know for a fact only exclusively buy from you?
I'd be hard pressed to think of any, because I come from a philosophy that says I don't believe any dealer owns a customer. I believe that most customers buy from multiple dealers.
Right. Okay.
Maybe my girlfriend, the beautiful Ian Ellis.
Well,
that's
so.
good.
Maybe.
Oh, dang.
Right on, man. Tommy, if people want to get a hold of you or they want to find you, can you give us some ways for them to get a hold of you?
Sure, absolutely. At stackin.nyc on Instagram is probably the best, because that's kind of where I live. But my website, www.stackin.nyc.
And all this will be in the description of the video. And that's kind of what I was gonna ask is that stuff too. But to go back to what you were talking about, is you're very active and you have to stay active to stay relevant and to
100%.
come up with all the ideas that you're coming up with, and then to continue to be able to stay active. Like, just what are some times that you're on Instagram doing a live stream?
So I do live streams on Instagram Mondays and Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do Facebook in the hashtag Silver Degenerates group. Thursdays at 8:30. I do drip on Tuesdays at 8:30.
Okay.
And then I do post sales 3 or 4 days a week, mostly on Instagram and Facebook.
Sure. How long would one of your auctions say last?
I probably average now 2 to 2.5 hours.
And what do you hold in there? 20, 30, 40 people, 100 people? How many are hanging out?
Engagement is down, and I think that's a function of maybe the competition, maybe whatever. But as my account has grown, I would say I average on Instagram about 50 to 60. On drip, maybe 30. On Facebook in the group, maybe 30 also.
Okay.
But engagement is
good
way
across
down.
the board all week. You know,
it's got to be constant. I've said to many people, because they're like, "Oh, you have such a big account. It's this, it's that." And I always say the same thing. I said, "Listen, if I took a month off of posting or going live, a month later I come back and people will be like, "Who's this guy?"
Yeah, right. No
Who
doubt.
is that?
That's not a joke.
It's not a joke.
Legit. That's for real.
Yep. That's
your business, and it's a great thing, man. I appreciate you being here with us. It was great.
And I'm grateful for you guys for the honor of having me on. You're both fantastic guys. I think you're going to have a lot of success with your show, and I'm going to be happy to be promoting it.
Hey, thank you so much,
That's
Tommy.
awesome. That's awesome.
All right, folks, don't forget, get on cruciblelive.com, sign up for that 5-ounce pour. in the mailing list, and then get on Instagram at the Crucible Podcast and on YouTube at the Crucible Podcast. Thank you
All right,
guys. We'll see you
everybody. You have a
soon.
great night. Thanks again, Tom.